Every day I scroll through YouTube and I'm like trying to find good content to consume. It's literally just like all updates about AI and the newest, greatest LLMs and like the benchmarks they beat. And I'm getting kind of overwhelmed with it, but I do want to kind of make a video to talk about the truth of AI because I do think there's a spectrum of how useful AI is. And there's a lot of people hyping it up. Content creators are getting a lot of view talking about vibe coding and talking about AI. But on that spectrum, there's also people who have used AI and they think that it's not very useful. So I'm going to go ahead and say the usefulness of AI. And this is scoped towards coding because this is a coding channel, but I'm assuming this could apply to all aspects of whatever industry that you may or may not be using AI for. So unfortunately, if you're on YouTube a lot, you are probably having your opinions skewed by people making content on these new models that come out. They're basically saying that, jobs are being cut, AI is replacing developers and stuff. And so on this end of the spectrum, I think there's a lot of people talking about AI and how amazing it is. So I'll say like vibe coders, content creators. I'm sure there's people on X talking about they made $60,000 a month by vibe coding a project. And I'm not saying that's true or not. I think some people do get lucky. And I think you could build a really simple project that makes a lot of money if you have a good idea. Right? Business is a lot more than just coding. It's about finding a good product market fit and then growing it as you get more revenue and users. Okay, so on this end, I'll say the most important thing in the world. This is the spectrum of hype, I guess. So the hype spectrum. Now over on the left, I do think that there's people who think AI is a slop generator. And I think there's also people who say AI is useless. And I also think that they don't even want to touch AI, right? And again, the people with these opinions, they're online, they're on YouTube, they're on X, they're saying that it's just generates slop. But I do think there is some truth to the usefulness of AI. I kind of feel like this is a distribution. Now, depending on your social media algorithms, you may getting a bunch of this content saying that like basically devs are going to lose their jobs and AI is going to replace everything. Or you may be part of this one where there's a ton of people saying that AI is worthless. Now, I would say that the truth lies somewhere in the middle, right? I have used AI a ton on my channel. As you know, I use Cursor all the time when I'm coding. I do tab completion. I use Cursor for chatting with different models to kind of digest my code base and give me some feedback. And I also use the agent mode a lot, right? So on all the projects I make on my channel, keep in mind that I make a bunch of small projects, right? My goal of this channel is to teach people. And usually teaching people involves a smaller project because most people on YouTube are trying to learn how to code. And showing them how a small project is built from scratch is much more useful than throwing them into a huge code base and trying to add a feature to it because they've already lost the context. They have no idea what's going on. So for all the small projects that I do on my channel and side projects, I have found that AI is actually extremely useful. Okay, so I think I'm probably more on this side where I do find a lot of benefits using AI. And again, I have prompted many features and fixed many bugs by a single prompt using the agent mode. More specifically, I think the model is what's going to make or break your opinion on AI, right? If you're using Claude Code or if you're using Cursor, you need to be using the best model, which in my opinion is still Claude 4. I've tried using the auto mode. It kind of sucks. I've tried these different models. Again, they kind of suck. Claude 4 has been the best model still to date. And I'm able to one prompt so many features. Like literally, I took a file that had like, 1,200 lines of code and I asked it to just completely refactor it all, split it up into using Jodi for shared state and break it into smaller components so it's easier to maintain. And it did it in one go. And it didn't even break my application. I would say in auto mode, it does break a lot of stuff. Okay, so that's my opinion on my smaller projects. And I'm not going to say that it's perfect. There are times where you will prompt AI and it's going to break your existing functionality. And as your files get larger in size and you have more complexity in your code base, sometimes AI is going to break existing functionality. It's going to inject bugs. Sometimes it has giant security vulnerabilities with the code that it uses. But again, if you are experienced and you review the code, I would say that most generally, it's a very positive experience coding with AI, and I have found myself to be extremely productive on my side projects. Now, going to the other end of the spectrum, there's a lot of hiccups you're going to run into depending on what AI tooling you're using. And that's just using the agent mode, right? There's a lot of other good uses of AI. For example, I have asked AI to traverse my code base and tell me how stuff works by generating a mermaid graph. And then it'll show you a graph directly in your code base so you can read through it and understand it. I have used it to take screenshots of existing designs of really nice looking websites. And I said, hey, can you basically apply that same design to my landing page? And it'll analyze the picture and it'll apply the same color schemes and it'll apply the same type of rounded corners on buttons and whatnot. And I would say that the better you are at prompting, I've been using Cursor, I think probably over for a year now. The better you are at prompting and giving context and making sure you keep your rule files up to date when stuff starts to break, and really utilizing all the features that are there for you. For example, like Cursor has a memory option where you can tell it to remember things about your project. You can bring MCP servers in, such as Context 7, to have it reach out to the internet and get the latest up-to-date documentation. One good example is I had it go look up the documentation for Drizzle or Prisma, and I wanted to make sure that I got the best relevant documentation, right? So having MCP server, again, the more you use AI, the more you start learning about all these tips and tricks that make you a lot more productive. Another thing that's worth mentioning is that this AI space is changing so rapidly, and I'm seeing improvements in these models within a couple of months. Like I made a video 4 months ago that says vibe coding actually sucks, and I tried to build like a 3D game. Going back to that video, I'm pretty sure I was using Auto and Cursor, which sucked at the time, and I wasn't even using Claude 4. So again, there's like things that you start to learn. So again, whatever your experience was with AI at the time, you may have had a bad experience, and you're going to let that cloud your judgment of how AI basically is. And the point I'm trying to make is that this stuff is changing so fast and improving so fast that your opinion that you had 4 months ago or 3 months ago is probably wrong, right? The tooling has become better. It's better developer experiences. There's more AI products out there that can help you be more productive. And the best thing I could recommend if you watch my channel, even if you're a junior or a mid or a senior, is be on top of these changes in the industry and also just play around with them and experiment with them. Formulate your own opinions on AI. Try it on small projects. Try it on large projects. Maybe it doesn't work good this month, but in 3 months, try it again and see if it has improved. Because I'm guaranteeing you, like it's a night and day difference of how these models are performing a year ago or 2 years ago versus today. And I can't imagine if we still keep that same trajectory of improvements in another year or two. Like I feel like we're going to be able to vibe code entire projects now and not have to ever even look at the code. So that's me on the hype spectrum. Let's kind of reel it back in because I do work full time, and the code base I do at work is about 500,000 lines of code, and it's kind of complex, right? It's very complex. It's using libraries that are not very well known by AI. It has a lot of tech debt that we're trying to address. And I would say that with a real life work project that's a large scale project, I'm more on the left of this, hype spectrum. I do think that AI is very useful sometimes, but a lot of the times I will ask AI to do something in my code base and it hallucinates, it gives me bad suggestions, and it leads me down a path that's just completely wrong. Now, granted, I haven't tried using Claude Code on this code base. Maybe Claude Code can handle it better than Cursor. All I know is that what I've seen on larger projects is that it doesn't work as well. If you're trying to add like a brand new feature or like add a brand new page, it's going to work perfectly fine, right? It's going to be able to understand how you're currently structuring your code and add in a new form and a new page and a new whatever, right? It doesn't have an issue with that. I'm talking about the more esoteric bugs that require a bunch of like diving into AWS console, understanding how stuff is all hooked together, deep diving into logs to try to understand what's going on. Why did this one scenario that happens 1 out of every 10,000 requests, why is it failing? Those type of things become so convoluted and hard to debug that AI is sometimes just not even useful, right? It's good to do ideation with it, and it can help you maybe find the answer, but a lot of times you can't just rely on it. And so if you have tried AI in the past and is doing a bunch of hallucinations on you, and it's like, churning out bad code and insecure code, you may be on this side of the spectrum. I think that's also a valid opinion, right? We're all currently experimenting with AI. We're all trying to see, is it useful for our current project? Maybe you're not using JavaScript or TypeScript. Maybe you're using Go, or you're using, PHP or Java, and the models maybe might not be trained as well in these things. The tooling, the libraries, and the frameworks that are built with whatever language that you're using at work may not produce the same outputs as what I'm seeing on my TypeScript side projects with Node.js backends or TanStack Start backends, right? So I guess what I would say to people on either end of these extremes of the spectrum is keep in mind that there's people out there who don't know how to code at all, don't even know how to do a for loop, but they're able to build fully functional applications that solve real business problems, right? Although they might be really small projects, this is still like an amazing thing that's happening. To have someone who has no coding experience who can just type into a prompt and have forms get added to a page, have those forms submit data to a backend, have that backend start processing that data and then send off events and send off emails by using like N8N. Like, we're in a phase of development which I've never seen before, and the productivity and the automation with like MCP. Don't just write it off. I think this is really important stuff to stay on top of, and becoming more fluid at using AI, more productive at incorporating AI into your workflow is definitely something that you need to remind yourself to do. And when I say remind yourself to do, sometimes we forget that there's like a chat panel here. And I have seen coders do this. Well, they'll just like get so lost in the code and try to fix the bug themselves, and they'll spend an hour or two trying to fix the issue. And they forget that they could literally just prompt AI at some point and say, hey, I'm stuck. Can you just help me get unstuck on this? Because I don't want to waste a whole day trying to debug something that's not really important. And sometimes AI can help you out. Sometimes it can't. At this point, I'm just rambling, but the term I would recommend keeping in the back of your head is AI first development, right? I do think, at least on all my side projects, the way I like to code is I use agent mode. And then sometimes I like to dive into the code and I'll use tab completion. Sometimes I'll use the chat feature if I want to do some type of ideation and have it check my code for certain things, or get more opinions on how I can make a better user experience, or how I can make a better design on my front end, or how I can restructure my code to make it more modular, decoupled. All those nice buzzwords that you learn from reading your Gang of Four books or your clean code books. You can apply those terms to the LLM, and often it can refactor your code to make it match whatever your criteria is. So I guess I'm curious, if you guys are using AI, how much do you incorporate it into your day-to-day workflow? And also, how useful are you finding it? Are you on this left side of the spectrum? Are you on this right side of the spectrum? Or are you maybe somewhere in the middle, right? I think it does take some time to figure out where you truly are. And like all things in life, if you're on one extreme of a spectrum, you're probably wrong, right? You probably have your head stuck in the sand and you're not truly seeing things from other people's perspectives. Same with this side, right? You're not seeing things from different people's perspectives. So that's about it. I hope you guys enjoyed my little TED Talk. Have a good day and happy coding.